Well, hello there, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Uncanny, where we take a look at some comic book goodness and whatever else we want to talk about that's comic book related. Now, I was asking myself this week, what do we do to follow up a big, serious two-part episode about death in comics? And I came to the conclusion that the thing that would be great to do is follow this up with something much lighter, much quicker, and much less serious, in a way. So what I'd like to discuss today is the comic or comics that really got you into reading the genre, or reading the art form, literature form, whatever you want to call it. Now, when I was a kid, and I'm talking pre-two digits, when I was, between the ages of, I don't know, 3 and 9, 4 and 9, maybe. I wasn't into comics, really. I had a few comics. I had a couple Alf comics and Real Ghostbusters, and an Amazing Spider-Man that I clearly remember because it was the end of a big storyline, and it also had Captain America in it. But what I preferred, and this is something that both my older brother and I really got into, were Mad magazines. And, there's a big part of it that it was funny, it was irreverent, it was illustrated. It was basically a big comic book, but with a lot of different short stories. And they were very relevant for popular culture at the time. Now, my personal favorite parts about that were one, Spy versus Spy, and two, the back cover, which you can fold up and see a secret image. And there were some gross things, there were some funny things. It's all what a preteen boy thinks is hilarious. Even if I didn't get most of the pop culture references, it didn't matter. We liked Mad magazines. Now, there was a time, and it was in about 92, maybe 93, I can't remember quite clearly, where I was at the drugstore with my mom, and from time to time when we'd go to the grocery store or the drugstore, I'd stop at the comic book rack, and I would do some quick read-throughs of a lot of different things. Maybe some Supermans or some Batmans, some Spider-Mans, things like that. But I came across this comic, and it sang out to me. It had a really cool cover. It had a hologram little thing on it, and it was X-Men number 25, the second series of X-Men. And this is the penultimate issue of the Fatal Attraction storyline, and it's where the X-Men invade Magneto's asteroid, and Magneto rips the adamantium out of Wolverine's skeleton, and Professor X mind wipes Magneto. And I immediately had to follow this with Wolverine number 75, which is the finale of that, and it's dealing with the fact that Wolverine does not have this adamantium, and his healing factor is going to overdrive. And you get some really cool things like, oh, he's got bone claws. He had claws all along. And this got me hooked. Just this one issue, X-Men number 25, got me hooked on comics. And it's one that I can remember the artwork almost panel for panel. I've read it and reread it over and over and over. About a year and a half to 2 years ago, I sold my comic book collection, which hurt. I mean, it still feels physically painful to me to even talk about that. But at the time, it was taking up space that I didn't have. I needed money pretty bad, so I sold it on Craigslist. I got massively ripped off for it. I mean, I got a good amount of money, but I had over 6,000 comics in my collection. That's how serious of a comic book collector I was. But what I kept back were the nostalgia comics, the comics that meant something to me over my years. And those were things like the Fatal Attraction story. I kept that X-Men 25. I kept that Wolverine 75. And I kept the other ones that went along with it. But after reading X-Men 25, it was on. I started reading from then, which I was about 11 years old at the time. Started reading every X book I could get my hands on. X-Men, Uncanny, X-Force, Wolverine, X-Factor, Cable. I'm sure I'm missing some titles in there that were around at that time. Got into Deadpool. I got to go to all these to see all this cool stuff. And at that time, drugstores were still the main place that I could get comics, and I have to really convince my mom to get me these comics. And I clearly saw that what I liked about them was both the art and the story and how they combined. When we'd go to my grandma's house, she would take us out, and I'd beg her to take me to the comic book store that was near her house. And I'd go and I would just peruse the new issues. I'd go through the back issues, and I'd start collecting all these things. I'd start reading about storylines that have happened in the past. I started researching them, getting back issues. But through high school, it was mainly X-Men. I was a big X-Men nut. And then I got into college, and all of a sudden, the X-Men comics started getting less interesting. The writing style was not nearly as good. There were a lot of changes that I just didn't like. And I got into DC. And I loved DC. At the time, Young Justice, and then I got angry when that became Teen Titans, but I still read it because it was still really good. Batman. I honestly never really got into Superman that much, even though of storylines, Superman was one of the first ones I really read, and that was with Reign of the Supermen. But I got into all these DC comics, and then post-college, I got back into Marvel. And I don't touch a DC comic anymore, not with the New 52. But again, that's a topic for another day. But for me, it always comes back to X-Men number 25. And while I did go back and I did collect all those back issues from 1 to 24, and then, gosh, hundreds and hundreds of issues of X-Men, of Uncanny, it was a little on the ridiculous side. It was that one comic that got it all started for me. So what I would like to know from you guys is, if you're big into comics, and if you're watching this show, I'm guessing that you do have this love of comics, or you're developing a love of comics. Is there a single issue out there for you that marks the beginning of your collection, of your obsession with this topic? If there's, what is it? What was it about that storyline? Maybe it's just a title that you really, really loved. Let me know in the comments down below. Give me some of your ideas. What made you love comics? So yeah, leave those comments. If you want, like this video, subscribe to the channel. That'd be awesome. And until next week, this is Baka, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.